Alice Thomas from Refugees International. I think that many of the issues you're talking about are things that many of us have known about for a long time. I mean, water scarcity in Yemen, and I actually have an environmental background. And now we also know that climate change is just going to add more stress to very complex dynamics. So what do we need to do differently? Because USAID, your office has been looking at this very closely. You do these conflict analyses, but how do we need to make more investments in technology? I mean, what will be some of the main things that will help us deal with these crises that we know are coming down the pike?
Well, and one of the things that we talked about before the session began when we were on the phone together last week was it's not all us as the actor, the agent of change. Some of it is societal awareness within these countries, the governments not being in denial, and there is, to grossly generalize, there's sometimes and I think Erica made this point last week, oh, we've been managing these problems for thousands of years. The Nile has been the Nile for thousands of years. So there's a sort of built-in cultural norm that somehow we survive, which is a very different attitude than the Western aid donors who always want to come in and solve a problem, and be transformational. And so I do think that part of what we're talking, it's not all about the outside actors figuring out what to do. It's also about the sort of societies themselves embracing these as issues that they want to work on. I think is that, yeah? Yeah.
So I would just add on, I mean, you're asking an important question, and and it's the question I think a lot of us are struggling with. And I can build on something that Ellen was saying, because I think it's very important. A lot of these communities have been dealing with these issues for a long, long time. And so USAID has started to, well, I shouldn't say has started to, but USAID has really embraced a label for what all those characteristics of those communities are that enable them to deal with those challenges. Communities that have great adaptive capacity, the ability to cope with a crisis. You mentioned, Alice, that there are going to be all these crises coming down the road. What can we do to help, prepare ourselves for them? Investing in those adaptive capacities, investing in people's capacity to cope and recover from these things, to manage the risks of disasters. That whole basket of things is what USAID is now working to develop what we're calling a resilience strategy around, to build those capacities in people. Because the belief is that you can't stop the crises from happening. They're going to happen. So what you need to do is prepare communities to enable them to recover from them as quickly as possible. And so one thing that we could be doing differently is being explicit about supporting those characteristics of resilience where they already exist, and where they don't exist, try to build them anew. That's one thing that we could be doing different. And then the second thing, and I know I'm a broken record, but when we're doing our programming for natural resource management anyway, let's be sensitive to conflict dynamics in those places. Because if you're not, whatever investment you make, when the armed conflict breaks out next, it will erase those investments. So we have to stop making those investments in places as if the conflict doesn't exist, because that's just wasteful. And so I think if we are better about hardwiring our sensitivity to conflict, we're likely to have more durable results there as well.